Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered with Sid. I'm your host, Sid Verma, and today I'm very excited to bring on my first ever guest, Miss Annalisa Bluhm. She's a passionate community leader and current candidate for Troy City Council. We'll be talking about what inspired her to run, what it's like working in local government, and how young people like us can get involved in our communities. Miss Bloom, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure, Sid. I'm honored. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Ms. Bloom, I wanted to start off by asking you what inspired you to run for Troy City Council?
I was inspired by a couple of things. One, my family always instilled in me a sense of community service. From a very young age, we were volunteering, we were serving our community, and I worked for a time in Senator Carl Levin's DC office, and he was a state senator and served many terms and is well regarded. And I really saw the impact that government could have. But at the time when I was, 21 years old, being in DC was really far from home for me, and it just didn't feel right to continue my career there at the time. So I came home. I started my career at General Motors. I built a family. I built a life. But I've been serving my community in many ways, either through Schroeder PTO or Troy High Bands and being on the Liquor Advisory Commission, working with council. And when I saw that there was an open seat, I really thought critically about where my time could be best spent in serving my community. And with over 25 years of leadership experience, with a big bond measure coming up, I thought I could really be of value here in terms of prioritizing the right things to move our city forward and to bring that seasoned leadership experience to the table. So that's really what compelled me to run. Because I thought it would be the best way to serve my family, quite honestly.
Right? That's an excellent response. Troy also has a reputation of being regarded as a great place for families. You
Hmm.
obviously brought up your family. So, what specific areas do you think require the utmost attention to keep that reputation alive?
Absolutely. Why I think Troy is the best place to raise a family really comes down to a couple of things. First is, especially for me, being a first generation American and seeing a community that cares. And what I mean by that is it's easy to find people who want to volunteer here. It's easy to find people who care a lot about education here, about meeting our neighbors and talking to them one on one versus just quick conversations online. There's a spirit of community here that I think is really, really special. Part of that, I think, is fueled by, again, our commitment to education and learning. It's why so many people moved here is the quality of our schools. And another extension of that is having parks and connected green spaces where people want to gather to serve our community together and help one another out. I also think our commitment to public service in the sense that we have an extraordinary police department. We've got a very well-trained volunteer fire department. We have services that a lot of other cities, for one reason or another, did not fund to the level that Troy has over time. And I really think our community benefits because of it.
All right, now switching gears a bit, what has been your most rewarding experience working within the community?
Oh, my most rewarding experience working in the community. That is such a good question. Um, I would have to say the most rewarding experience that I've had to date has been the work that I've done on disability awareness. It's a topic that's really dear to me, both in terms of myself identifying as neurodivergent. I have dyslexia, and so I always sought to find ways to help people understand that it's not a disadvantage, it's an advantage. And then also, my daughter also has some neurodivergencies and epilepsy as well. So, with that came a real need for me to serve my community and provide more access, more opportunities, but also stand as someone who can serve as an example that there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's an absolutely nothing that you can't do. And the fact that we think differently actually is a true advantage when it comes to problem solving or analysis, because we see the world just a little differently. And I think that is incredible. So I've spent a lot of time nationally, locally, and at the state level speaking, raising funds, helping to bring awareness, and serving as an example that there's no shame in neurodivergency, and it's something that we really need to celebrate.
Right. That's an incredible response and just a fantastic way to look at that side of things. Now that you told us of your experience in the community, for students listening who want to help out too, can young people get involved in local issues?
Oh my word, yes. There are so many opportunities for young people of every age, stage, and capability to get involved. I would say if you have an interest, don't think about it in terms of the government relations or the policy side first, because I think that can be really limiting and intimidating. Because when you're looking at city council or positions on appointed committees, you're looking at really seasoned individuals and you're thinking, well, that's where change happens, but it's not. We listen, we engage, we implore people to sign up for the student services that are available even through city council. So there's committees that are tailored for students that we're always looking for applicants. Or if you have an interest in learning more about government and how it works, or potentially serving on a campaign, for example, for my campaign, we have so many opportunities for internships and we will tailor them to anyone's needs. You want to help with social media, you want to do groundwork, you want to help craft policies for the candidate. I can think of literally every campaign at the state, local level that would gladly take intern support and help. And it's a phenomenal way to build your resume, build your experience, and get to see things firsthand, as well as serve on the ground and see if you like this type of work. And then with that internship, it then propels you to other internship opportunities. So there's no limit, even if you're not at voting age, in terms of service here in Troy for people who are interested, either through city council, there's committees. Troy Schools also has student-run committees. The library has committees as well. And as you look around and see candidates, send them a note, offer your services to volunteer, and I guarantee you will get a response.
Yeah, thank you for informing me on that. I've been looking for ways to give back myself. And now, on a slightly different note,
Mhm.
were there potential mistakes that you made in your career that have shaped how you lead today?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think growth and having a growth mindset and seeing opportunities where, in retrospect, perhaps you would have taken a different turn or considered a different option. I wouldn't just say that in terms of career moves, but a healthy perspective is to be always looking at how, when you approached a task or had an issue to solve, is there something that you would have done differently? And I encourage that line of thinking always. So personally, for me, because I come with that mindset that every setback is just a way to see another open door. I would say when I chose to leave General Motors to move into the vice president role at Northrop Grumman, which was a defense industry, I took a big risk. I was leaving a nearly 20-year career into a remote role where I knew that there likely one day would be a an expectation that it would no longer be remote, that instead of flying back and forth to DC from Troy or working remotely from home most of the time, that I would probably be asked to move to Virginia. And then when that day came, I was at peace with that choice and was very grateful for all the opportunities that that role afforded me, even though it was the time to leave that role. And I think when you look at a misstep per se, I didn't take the risk of taking a job that I knew one day would probably ask me to move to Virginia as a downturn or anything. But I took it with gratitude and pride. But I can think of so many opportunities where it's just that mindset and making sure that you're thinking of all the ways that you could have learned from the experience, and then making sure that the next step that you take is an informed one is something I encourage everyone to do.
Yeah, and just to expound on that a little bit more, was there a piece of advice or like an insight that you learned that you picked up from that experience that still guides you today?
Absolutely. I think knowing yourself and knowing which risk that you're comfortable taking and having an informed plan is always the right step. I think in terms of being critical about my experience and what did I know going in, I made sure that I was eyes wide open and that I was always looking for the way that if it didn't work out, what my next step would be. Um, so I think being aware of what your comfort level is, being aware of your risk tolerance, keeping your community close so that way, if you ever do need to identify what the next step is, you can see the path. You've informed and engaged mentors who are keeping you honest through the journey. And then, I think, especially when it comes to careers, and you may not feel this way right now as a student, but when you start to align on your path forward, a part of your identity lies with it. You're really thinking about yourself in the context of the work that you're doing or the service you're providing. And it provides a sense of great meaning and purpose. But if overused, it could define who you are in such a sense that you cannot see yourself without it. And having mentors and other people along the way that remind you that you're more than your job or you're more than your career, that you're also a good person, that you're an extraordinary parent, that you're a good friend, that you're an excellent sibling. Keeping that sense of purpose as you navigate your career does a couple of things for you. Keeps you grounded, keeps you focused on what your priorities should be outside of providing for your family. Um, but you never lose that sense of purpose as to who you are and how you're going to keep your life in balance and how you wish to move forward because it's coming from a place of great knowing about yourself. So that I know may sound distant to you perhaps as a student, but it's really, really important to keep in mind that you are more than your career. You are more than that moment in time, and you get to choose how you define yourself and move forward.
Right. Thank you so much for those great insights. That was incredibly deep. Now on to the next question. How do you choose which issues to prioritize during your campaign?
Choosing which items to prioritize in my campaign came from a couple of areas. One, I leveraged my business experience to really lean in and look through the budget, not just this annual budget that had been passed by council recently, but a couple of budgets leading up to that, at least 5 years, so that I could see a time horizon. Because with the bond, there was this big expression that there's just not enough money in the capital fund to fund our priorities, library, roads, public service, all of these things. And so it led to the question of how did we get here in the first place? Could it have been avoided with different leadership? And I want to really make sure that I understand the capital allocation and funding that went into this. So I first took data, right? Take a look at what the data is telling me so that way I can assess what is or isn't true. And then the second part that I did was I sat back and I listened. I went to over 200 community meetings, meeting with over 2,000 people, and then knocked 4,000 doors through the course of the campaign. I made myself available, I listened, and then I sat back and thought about what I heard from community members all across Troy in different subsets. Because when I thought about my experience as a mom, as a first generation American, as someone who spent a tremendous amount of time serving her community, but really in schools, that meant that I had a very narrow perspective as to what was framing my bias of thinking. I'm thinking as a mom who has kids in schools, who has a certain mindset, right? So I could think of the bond or I could think of issues in a certain way, but I'm missing a senior's perspective. I'm missing, a younger person's perspective. I'm missing the perspective of someone who doesn't have kids or may not make what I make, right? So I needed to really be mindful that I was checking my biases and listening with the most perspective that I could offer. And then from that, I then looked at what the budget was telling me, what I heard from residents and constituents, what I saw from a business perspective, um, and drew out some Venn diagrams as to where I felt that there were real apparent needs that weren't being met with current council's leadership. And that's where I came upon my position of EMS. One, we need to improve those response times because as someone who has a daughter with epilepsy, and I've been in the position where when the ambulance came, it came late and it didn't know what to do with a pediatric patient. I had a point of view and a personal passion that aligned with the need that I saw from the budget and also that I was hearing from other constituents. And then the other area that aligned with one of my personal passions, which is, urban mobility and green space, and seeing hundreds of commercial buildings empty, but yet hearing from residents that we don't have enough houses, while at the same time seeing neighborhoods where the green space is being knocked down to build in apartments and other homes where we could take the existing commercial space, repurpose them to housing. So you're seeing that in a development at Lindsay Center on Big Beaver. And there's also another development that's off of Corporate Drive right behind where Red Robin is. Um, that's where some of those choices are being made, and we can accelerate those. And another area that I care a lot about, given education and job growth and development from my prior experience, is bringing in a tech incubator like Sterling Heights has so that we can incubate and innovate jobs that don't yet exist, as well as put in a trades component in case, if STEM jobs aren't in line for that vision for this company or for that individual, to pursue as a career. There's so much opportunity out there with trades. How can we incubate and encourage those jobs, not just for residents, but to then have a residency requirement for that business to stay in Troy? So that again came from the position of seeing what was absent, what am I good at, what am I hearing, and how could I bring that point of view and that position to Troy in a really meaningful way. And I think those really became my core positions that I've been talking to people about, in addition to the fact that I've managed capital budgets for a long time. I have no problem with complexity. I've managed global budgets, in the billions. So if we're going to come to a project management position with the bond, which is quite large, especially for Troy, this is something that I've done and done well and know that I could manage on behalf of the city.
All right. One thing that I just wanted to ask you further on was how do you weigh what residents want versus what you see as important for the long-term health of Troy?
That's such an excellent question in the sense that you have to balance out what you're hearing from people's perspective and understanding that not everybody has the time, resources, or the ability, quite frankly, to go deep into the financials, the how DPW works, what grants and agreements do we have with neighboring cities or Oakland County. There's so much complexity when it comes down to municipal funding and prioritization and not everyone's going to have time to go through things like Community Academy that teaches you about what each department does and how they're funded and how they work. So when you hear people from their perspective, you have to step back and say, one, they may not, if that really was the case, if what you believe was true, I would be just as upset about it as you are. I would. However, here's some of the realities of the situation that may not have been apparent, right? Because they're hard to understand and it takes a lot of in-depth knowledge and things that you may not have access to. So if we take a look at that and then really think about what the issue is, do you still feel the same way? And that really aligns and smooths out 9 times out of 10. Sometimes the miscommunication that I see in terms of feedback from neighbors or residents or misunderstandings that can come from just the nature and complexity of municipal government. But also when you write to city councilors, city managers, and the response that you get, it's heavily in municipal speak. So it's not really reasonable to expect someone who doesn't look at contracts all day, who isn't thinking about provisions and all the charter agreements and this, that, and the other thing. You kind of have to break it down to if you were talking to your neighbor or your friend and start from there, because I really do believe that for the most part, once we get to the truth of the matter in a way that people can understand, and then we can align on feedback, there oftentimes is a nugget of real need that's coming from someone's perspective, even if some of the information they have may not be as informed. I see this in real time relative to the budget. There's questions about, are we our tax rates and what's driving that, and We really have as many mills as neighboring cities, and again, like if you had access to the financials and you could see it, um, and maybe not have to rely so much on things like ChatGPT to know whether or not what your opinion may be on it. It again, I find most of the time when we're able to talk about things in a human way and listen to one another, it really does break down some of those concerns that I hear, and that can be course corrected as well. But also, neighbors and other people have experiences that are super valid. They're upset that, their trash may not have been picked up, or there's an issue with their road, or I was canvassing and someone told me that their drain had not been maintained in a long time and it was overgrown and she was elderly. And come to find out, the drain was managed by Oakland County and kind of fell off the list, right? So it's impacting her life, and she had every right to wonder where her taxes were going that day and why they weren't clearing the drain. Um, and by leveraging the connections that we have in city council and talking to the city manager, they were able to resolve it. But it would have been very easy to discount her experience and saying like, well, that's not Troy's problem. It is though. She's a resident and we should care about her thoughts.
Right. The points that you've made are points that showcase great leadership, and balancing the needs of people must require a lot of leadership. So what qualities do you think make a great leader?
That's a really excellent question. I think leadership requires authenticity, where you know who you are and you're transparent in that so that it doesn't come off as inauthentic, right? Um, People have a high threshold for whether or not they believe leaders are telling them the truth, especially when that truth is hard. And I continue to believe that if you're authentic and transparent and show that consistency over time, you're building trust day in and day out. The other core component of leadership is listening more than you talk, quite frankly, because I feel people have a real need to be heard. Most of the time, they're making really strong observations. And if you are quiet and listen enough, you can probably see the connections where other people may not. And it's incumbent on a good leader to listen, to take that feedback, and to find ways to make meaningful change. But again, leveraging that transparency and authenticity when sometimes, even if we're upset about it, what is it that we're able to do and move forward? Or perhaps even though you're upset, my position may not change, right? Based on the information that I have. But you can trust that I'll be honest about it. So authenticity, transparency, and listening. And then breaking it down into ways that people can understand you. I think those four are the absolute North Stars for any good leader.
Those were some brilliant points that you've made. Now to wrap things up with my final question, when you're not working or campaigning, how do you like to spend your time?
Well, when I'm not working or campaigning, I can't wait to get back to my exercise routine, golfing with my husband. I love cooking. So my family and I do a lot of cooking, especially as an Italian American. We have big Sunday dinners where the whole family comes over. And so that's really what I like to do. I still am very active in serving my community. So my volunteering with Friends of Foster Care, Epilepsy Foundation of Michigan, as well as in my church community are still very present. Because those will always connect me to the community. So I find a lot of joy in it. But I have not stepped foot in the gym in about 8 weeks, and I cannot wait for campaign season to be over to get back into my routine, and get a little bit more balance in my life. Because right now, every minute where I'm not serving my family or my job, I am out knocking doors, writing thank you letters, calling people, reminding them to vote. Um, and so I'm very eager to have a little bit more time where I can go to the gym, enjoy a meal on Sunday, and find balance again. But yeah, that is what I like to do. I enjoy cooking. I'm an avid runner. I power lift when I'm able. Um, And when I get to sneak out and play 9 holes of golf with my husband, that's a pretty great week.
Well, that's a great note to end on. This was a fantastic conversation, Miss Bloom. Thank you again for taking your time to share insights and experiences with us. It was inspiring to hear how local leaders like you shape our community. It's been such a pleasure having you on, and I appreciate your time today.
Well, Sid, I appreciate you, your thoughtful questions, reaching out, wanting to have a conversation, and encouraging young people to get involved is so important. I think the best part of this, honestly, when you are involved in campaigns, is talking to our neighbors and getting a chance to meet people. Um, I can't tell you how rewarding that is. So I encourage young people to get involved, to spend time, and to learn. And if for nothing else, it looks great on your resume and your college application. So get involved, talk to people, get to know your community, and set yourself up for success.